I'm also just thinking here, there's kind of a spiritual similarity maybe about in the way that you initially described Jupiter Lend and what Jupiter started out with in the aggregator, where when you swap through Jupiter's aggregator, you don't have to see the way that the algorithm works and routes your trade. You just trade and it gives you a good price. And you're sort of saying the same thing with lending, where it's you don't have to see where the funds are going, but you're going to get the highest APY on the platform. So it feels like a continuation of sort of Jupiter's MO in that way.
Absolutely. I mean, the key insight is that Solana has a lot of retail users. All love to Ethereum. I started on Ethereum. Samyang is obviously deep Ethereum, so I'm not going to say anything mean about them. But like they oftentimes end up being kind of more whatever academic, or at the very least more sophisticated, right? Like they have larger quantity of money if they're on mainnet paying those kind of gas fees and so on. But Solana is really the everyman's chain. It's built for anybody anywhere, from my cousin to my nephew to my niece to be able to use. And so in that perspective, like the UX matters way more on Solana than it does on other networks. It's the reason that Jupiter's been successful, and I would argue that Solana as a whole has been successful. So that kind of that focus on how do we make things even easier for users is a big reason why we've had the success we've had, and hopefully it repeats itself over on the lens side.
Mm-hmm. One piece I want to ask you about, Kash, is as far as potential sources of new demand or products that could be popular on Jupiter Lend, I feel like JLP comes to mind. This is one that Daniel Shapiro flags in his report. This liquidity provider token for Jupiter. It's, I think, a very big market on Camino right now. Obviously, I would think Jupiter would like that to happen on Jupiter Lend instead. So what are the potential synergies or ways you're thinking about the JLP market and how that relates to Jupiter Lend?
Yeah, JLP is the cornerstone of Solana DeFi, like point blank, period. It's like a $1.7 billion asset right now. And, I don't want to dig into anyone else's pockets, but I can promise you this, that the other major DeFi protocols on Solana, like it is one of their primary revenue drivers, if not their primary revenue driver. So it is definitely an incredibly valuable thing. And it's awesome that everyone loves it. I mean, it's like 29% APY right now as a diversified basket of majors. And yeah, we just think that, hey, like if you trust JLP, Jupiter is right there in the name. You probably want to use the same place to do it. As simple as like the mint experience. Like if you're getting JLP from the pool, we can do little UX things like a little pop-up that says like, hey, now you have JLP. Do you want to use it as collateral? Do you want to multiply it and earn more yield? Do you want to do all sorts of different things with it? And so, yeah, I'm hopeful and optimistic that a lot of that liquidity moves back to Jupiter, to its kind of home base. And we think that over time, as we have more kind of sophisticated vaults and strategies, things like hedging JLP, which is again like the number one use case of some other DeFi protocols right now, that we'll be able to retain even more liquidity and have both more kind of like revenues for Jupiter itself, but also more kind of value for users.
And just beyond the fact that it's like, okay, co-branding between JLP and Jupiter Lend, like are there unique ways that bringing this thing in-house, like there's products around JLP that Jupiter could add that competitors maybe couldn't?
There is certainly a spectrum of things that we could do. I think a lot of them we don't want to do. Like there are ways in which you could kind of like limit the usage of JLP and other protocols, or like just add extra friction or something like that. That we're not interested in doing at all. Like I think that Solana DeFi is pretty fucking tiny right now, like in relative to like TradFi or anyone else. And so like the goal is definitely not to like slow down anyone else's growth. So we want to make sure that it's like a free and fair playing field for all people there. So to that degree, there's probably some products that are that we could build that might be similar in other protocols. But since it is like a free floating token, most of the improvements I think will largely be on the UX side, the ease of use side, the brand trust side, those kinds of things.
Okay, interesting.
But I will say, just like as one other point, we recently launched this thing called JLP loans, where you can actually use JLP as collateral within the JLP pool itself. And there we can offer like incredibly great rates because there's whatever $500 million of USDC in the JLP pool or something like that. So it's like an incredibly deep pool, and that is something only we can do because we have access to the underlying liquidity and so on. So there certainly are like some kind of product integrations, but it's not like something that we're trying to corner the market on or anything like that.
And then maybe just say a quick word before we move on from JLP. Just I don't want to like assume that everyone knows like what when you're trading JLP, what does that token actually represent? And when you say it's the cornerstone of Solana DeFi, like what gives it that place other than just the size
I would
of the
say
asset?
I never give financial advice, just like as a rule, I've been in crypto long enough not to do this. But I will say, not financial advice, personally, JLP is my favorite token in the entire ecosystem because it is just like such a banger idea. So Jupiter Perps is not an order book based perps platform like you'd see elsewhere. It's an AMM model, right? Which means that every time a trader is trading something, they're trading against a pool of liquidity that other people have deposited. And so within Jupiter Perps, you can trade right now Sol, BTC, and ETH. And so JLP represents an index of those plus a bunch of stable coins. So when you hold JLP, what you actually are holding is almost like an index fund of the crypto majors, except the JLP naturally earns yield because 75% of all the trading fees on Jupiter Perps go back to JLP holders to kind of compensate them for providing the liquidity in the first place. So it's this nice kind of like symbiotic ecosystem between traders on the one hand and liquidity providers on the other. As I said, it has like a 29% APY right now. That'll vary from anywhere between 10 and 50%. The reason that it's become the cornerstone is that one, it's the single deepest pool anywhere on Solana, to my knowledge. I think it's like $1.7, $1.8 billion right now. And two, that real yield is something that's incredibly attractive, particularly to more kind of sophisticated investors or professional investors. So the number one trade for liquid funds this cycle on Solana has not been, go long this or go short that. It's actually been to get JLP, hedge the underlying, which means short Bitcoin, Sol, and Ethereum in the relative proportions, and then just capture that yield because you're fully delta neutral, right? You're not taking any directional risk. You're just getting that 29% APY right now. And so if you look at Drift, for example, and shout out to the Drift folks, they have just a ton of vaults that are just like hedged JLP exposure, right? And because the APY is so big, that's why people want to multiply it and loop it a lot on platforms like Camino and others. And so whether like that yield being kind of true yield, not Ponzi yield, has really kind of cemented its place across the ecosystem. All of that being based on predicated on the fact that Jupiter Perps has lots of trading activity, that people really like to use it, and that we have a lot of brand trust around it.
Yeah, well put. And I guess the other thing I just wanted to ask is like, we've spoken a little bit about this here and there, but just to put it plainly, like what kind of net new activities or products does Jupiter having its own lending protocol enable?
For us, it's right now to start, it's relatively straightforward, right? We want to get the basics right before we start to get a little bit crazy. And let me assure you that something that's got some crazy ideas like in store. So right now, it's really just like lend your crypto, earn APYs, as simple as that. Borrow with the best LTVs and all that other good stuff. And then we have multiply vaults on day one as well, which allow you to kind of get leveraged exposure to JLP or Jupe Sol or whatever other asset that you might want. Over time is where things get really interesting. So, as Samik mentioned, there's smart debt and smart collateral. And basically, if imagine that Jupiter Lend goes up to whatever $2 billion in TVL, right? What kind of products could you build if you had $2 billion of liquidity ready to go for anything that you wanted to do? You didn't have to bootstrap it, right? And that's oftentimes the limiting constraint to new product development is the liquidity behind them. And we don't have that constraint. So to start, we're going to keep it easy. In the future, I think people can expect to see some pretty fun experiments.